The world once went straight to hell when the Tower of Monsters appeared out of nowhere, unleashing a swarm of horrifying beasts that tore through everything like a plague. Cities got wiped out, chaos ruled every corner, and humanity was on the verge of extinction until the progenitors showed up, the first transcendents who flipped the script by crushing the invasion and bringing that damn tower down. They became legends carved into history, worshipped like gods, and their remains were laid to rest in the sanctuary of the progenitors. Centuries later, a kid named Minato Kanagi grew up idolizing them, spending his days buried in books inside the sanctuary library, reading about heroes like the swordmaster who split 10,000 monsters in one strike, and the mage who could cast spells without a single word. Those stories built a fire in his chest, pushing him to dream of being remembered the same way. And when a strange mark, the same one the Transcendence, had appeared on him, he thought his destiny had finally arrived. But reality had other plans. When the results of the Transcendence exam came out, the whole class exploded in joy, while Minato stood frozen, staring at his result failed again. It was his third try, his final shot, and the rules were brutal, no more chances. Everyone said the Hunter exam was easier than signing your own name, yet somehow he still couldn't pass. All the talent, the potential, that mark he thought meant something. It all felt like a cruel joke now, nothing but a reminder of dreams that died before they began. Holding back tears, he heard his name being yelled from outside as classmates called him to the gate, but his heart wasn't in it. All the attention was on someone else, Kaisei Hizaki, the golden boy who had it all. A-rank hunter, top of his class, every girl's favorite, every guy's standard of perfection. Reporters surrounded him like bees to honey, flashing cameras in his face as he pretended to act humble, talking about his academy days and his heroic dragon kill while brushing off compliments with fake modesty. Standing at the back, Minato burned inside. He and Kaisei had started together once, but only one of them rose to glory, and worse, that same guy used to torment him every damn day. Then a reporter pointed toward Minato asking who he was, and Kaisei didn't even flinch before calling him an old friend, couldn't even remember his name. He laughed it off, saying Minato used to bug him for advice and money, twisting the story like the lying scumbag he was, while everyone around kept hyping him up as some flawless saint. With that perfect grin plastered on his face, Kaisei declared he'd become one of the greatest transcendents in history, and someone even joked that Minato was lucky to have such a mentor. Every word felt like a punch. And before leaving, Kaisei made sure to humiliate him again by bringing up his failure in front of everyone, pretending it was casual talk. Cameras flashed, people laughed, and Minato could do nothing but fake a smile and thank him for his support, just to escape the spotlight of embarrassment. Kaisei then waved the reporters off, telling them to check out his trophies, and like sheep, they followed him, completely forgetting Minato existed. Because that's how the world worked, no one remembered failures, only the ones who shined, even if they were rotten to the core. Tears stung Minato's eyes as he stood there wondering if his name would ever mean anything, but before he could sink deeper, Kaisei's voice cut through the noise, telling him to meet at the shrine after school. Panic and confusion hit instantly. That bastard never called him unless it was bad news. But Kaisei, acting like a saint again, claimed he'd talked to the Hunter Association to get Minato another shot at the test. The words shocked him, but the smirk on Kaisei's face told the truth. It was just for show, another performance to polish his own image. He said they'd do one last photo shoot at the shrine and warned him not to skip. Minato didn't trust a word, but somewhere deep inside, a faint spark of hope flickered. Maybe this time things would be different. The next-gen superstar of the progenitors stood there with that perfect camera-ready smile, vowing to protect humanity from monsters like some flawless hero from the movies. And when the filming wrapped up, the reporters thanked Kaisei for letting them shoot all day, despite his stacked schedule, before leaving him alone at the shrine where his real mission began. Once the crowd disappeared, he asked his lackeys if they found the entrance, and with smug grins, the guys confirmed they had done their job, prompting Kaisei to tell them to go fetch the stuff. Suddenly, a voice came from behind, demanding to know what he was up to, and instead of denying it, the man just admitted he was treasure hunting like it was no big deal, while Minato tried to call him out for robbery, asking if he even knew who was buried there. But the arrogant A-rank hunter simply said it didn't matter. With a stomp so strong it sent rocks flying, Kaisei mocked the dead as nothing but moldy mummies, and bragged about how selling their relics would make them rich, instead of letting everything rot away, even laughing at how Minato still believed in the whole progenitor hero myth that once inspired him too. Remembering the promise he once made to be like those heroes filled Minato with rage until he charged straight at the bastard. But Kaisei, being naturally perfect at everything, dodged and landed a clean hit in Minato's stomach, hard enough to make him vomit blood and collapse. Taunting him, the superstar reminded him who he was dealing with, and while Minato lay there realizing that blow alone could have killed him, the lackeys yelled that they'd found the treasure, their bags now full of sacred relics. Even while bleeding on the ground, Minato felt panic rise inside him as Kaisei sensed a strange aura from the items, already imagining himself living like royalty forever. He grabbed Minato by the collar, admitting he'd only needed someone dumb enough to fall for the fake test story, laughing about how the rumors of Minato's desperation made him the perfect scapegoat, then laid out his twisted plan. A washed-up loser who failed to reach his dream, tried stealing relics from his own heroes, and vanished. Kaisei even laughed, saying it'd make front-page news, calling it the story of a third-year student accused of robbing the progenitor's sanctuary, already teasing how the cops had a suspect. Releasing him, Kaisei asked his name again before coldly saying it didn't matter, and the terrified boy realized this was probably the end before tumbling off the cliff and plunging into the dark water below. As he sank, he wondered if this was really how his story ended, and if anyone would even remember him, before glowing orbs surrounded him and transformed into strange ethereal beings, who debated if he could be the vessel they'd been waiting for. The lights revealed themselves as the spirits resting within the progenitor's sanctuary, and Minato's eyes widened in disbelief as he tried to make sense of the surreal sight, while one spirit explained that the mark on his hand was the mark of the void, a seal with no power of its own, but capable of containing any. They asked him to choose a progenitor to bond with, saying each figure represented a master of their craft: mages, swordsmen, martial artists, spear fighters, and summoners, and whoever he chose would grant him a power beyond imagination. When they asked what he desired, Minato's heart knew the answer he wanted: the ultimate strength, something that'd wipe away every humiliation and make sure no one ever pushed him around again. The mage urged him to hurry, and instead of choosing one, Minato demanded the power of all of them, shocking the spirits who said even a strong vessel might not endure that much power. But he refused to back down, shouting that he didn't care about limits and wanted them all. Suddenly, all the spirits were pulled into the glowing mark on his hand, leaving the progenitors stunned as the magic circle under him blazed with light, while the water around him rose unnaturally high. Kaisei's henchman opened an umbrella to block the spray as everyone stared in awe at Minato levitating, his body glowing with an intense aura before landing with a gaze completely different from the weak kid they once bullied. The spiky-haired goon joked that Minato was harder to kill than a cockroach, but the boy ignored him, calmly checking something in his hand, and when they saw it, they burst into laughter, mocking him for thinking he could fight with a stick. Kaisei cut them off, ordering them to finish him and make sure he never comes back, and the sword expert among them stepped forward, bragging about his top scores in swordsmanship as his blade shimmered in the air. Unbothered, Minato simply lifted the stick, and when the guy charged, his body and sword were instantly sliced apart like paper, leaving everyone stunned. As the others froze in horror, Minato spoke again, almost curious about what made them think their sword was special. But before they could respond, another lackey launched a green magic attack known as the Gaze of Destruction, glowing with a bright yellow aura, yet Minato just pointed his finger and said he was too slow before unleashing a spell called Hadad that erupted into a blinding explosion. The bulky man fell to the ground, burned and defeated, while Kaisei stood there speechless, realizing this guy could slice someone with a twig and cast advanced spells without uttering a chant, just like the legendary Blade Master who slew 10,000 monsters, or the silent mage who broke the code of magic itself. Those beings were myths, but now their spirits lived inside Minato Kanagi, 106 of them in total. Kaisei once bragged that Minato's name would go down in history as one of the great transcendents, but now that ego-driven superstar's own name didn't deserve a place in those immortal legends, declaring that only they would be remembered while the rest fade away. A deep blue aura flared around Minato, amplifying his presence into something unreal, and as he stood there glowing, he could literally feel the spirits of the progenitors resonating inside him, their energy tangled with the mark of the void carved into his hand. The voices of ancient heroes echoed through his mind, some amazed by how many runes surrounded them, others laughing that they hadn't felt this alive in centuries, and for a moment, he couldn't believe these legendary figures he'd only ever read about were now a part of him. Closing his eyes, Minato visualized them standing before him, smiling with pride and power, their expressions soon turning serious as they debated who among them would take control of his body first, until a calm voice called out Raikiro Hinoku, the swordsman who once defeated 10,000 monsters with a single strike. The long-haired legend smiled, proud that his name still echoed through time, saying that true legends never die, before asking the boy what he intended to do next. Minato thought he meant the last bully still standing, but Raikiro pointed to the real issue ahead. When the chosen one opened his eyes, he finally understood, and as he stepped forward, Kaisei mocked him again, calling him a loser while pulling out his sword and ranting about teaching an A-rank lesson. But before the man could even finish, Minato's fist connected straight with his face, sending him flying effortlessly. Expressionless, Minato just wanted the obstacle gone. Yet the moment he moved, a dark aura leaked from the backpack, glowing brighter until the whole area pulsed with unnatural light, while Raikiro watched with satisfaction as chaos unfolded. Elsewhere, the city was losing its mind, sirens blaring, buildings shaking, and a massive three-headed black dog was tearing through the streets, smashing everything in its path. With a roar that cracked windows, it lunged at a man, but the figure dodged cleanly and countered with a blow strong enough to flatten the beast in one hit. Onlookers went wild seeing Kisaragi, the S-rank hunter, crush an A-rank monster like it was nothing, and as he caught his breath, he wondered where Kaisei had gone, remembering he was supposed to be busy with an interview to polish the guild's image. But something felt off. When Kisaragi turned in alarm, the hunters around him were collapsing one by one, gasping under a suffocating pressure so intense even A and B class members couldn't stand. The air itself was trembling, and he realized whatever was coming wasn't just another monster, it was something on an S rank or higher level. A nightmare spreading its presence straight from the progenitor's sanctuary. Back at the shrine, Kaisei lay on the ground, frozen in terror, as a horrifying black creature with countless eyes and writhing tentacles crawled out of the backpack, and when he screamed asking what the hell it was, Minato said it was his fault for defiling the sanctuary, revealing that one of the tower's sealed boss monsters had been sleeping inside those stolen relics. Raikiro's voice explained that some monsters had once cheated death by entering hibernation, and this one was known as the Plague of Futility, a disaster-class entity whose aura could poison and kill life across kilometers. The swordsman said such creatures were as common as flies back in ancient days, but now, this thing had reawakened, radiating hatred, its eyes blinking open one after another. Kaisei panicked, saying he was done and was leaving, but Minato warned him that moving would instantly make it target him since nothing escaped its gaze. Before he could react, a tentacle lashed out, shattering Kaisei's blade, the same one that once killed a dragon and pierced his body, draining his life away as he screamed helplessly. Coldly, Minato said he tried to warn him. Then Raikiro spoke again, asking the boy what he thought about letting him take full control, tempting him with the promise of mastering the Hinoku sword to destroy the creature while the other spirits settled their arguments. Minato agreed easily, saying he didn't mind lending his body, but before Raikiro could celebrate, the others jumped in, refusing to let him hog the vessel. The real shock came when Minato said he'd lend himself to all of them, claiming he would surpass them all no matter what it took and that he wanted to experience their full power firsthand. Raikiro growled that the brat didn't know what he was asking for, but it was too late. He had already synced with them, turning himself into a living conduit for 106 transcendence. Their power flowed through him like wildfire as Raikiro guided his movements, turning Minato into a human weapon whose strikes sliced through the monster's tentacles like butter, even if his makeshift weapon cracked under the force. Another spirit took over immediately, channeling martial arts and ripping off another limb of the beast, and before the creature could recover, more progenitors possessed him in turn one after another, unleashing pure chaos. When the monster stumbled, Minato seized the moment, grabbed a fallen branch, and felt the archer's soul merge with his, launching a radiant arrow that split into beams, piercing the monster's body as green fluid splattered across his face. He wiped it off, eyes burning, and kept attacking with perfect transitions between every master's technique. When the opportunity came, Raikiro urged him to grab Kaisei's broken sword, and just as the creature swung its tentacles again, they froze mid-air, held by unseen energy as another spirit, the mage, took command, lifting Minato, without a word, while energy surged through him. The newest transcendent fused with Raikiro, channeling the Hinoku style in its purest form, summoning a storm of lightning that wrapped around the sword before unleashing it like divine wrath, slicing the plague-born abomination clean in half. When the smoke cleared, Minato stood there, breathing hard, watching the monster's remains dissolve, and for the first time in forever, a satisfied smile spread across his face. Night fell heavy across the city, the full moon slicing through the darkness as a lone crow sat perched, watching everything like it knew a secret no one else did. Somewhere far away, a man picked up his phone only to hear the monster had already been taken down before he could even arrive, surprised as hell since there weren't supposed to be any powerful hunters nearby. The crow's footage confirmed the scene, and when the man realized it was supposedly a student from the hunter training school who'd done it, he couldn't help but grin, saying he needed to meet this kid himself. That man was Midori Ichihara, the strongest transcendent in the world, casually chatting on the phone with the director after years of silence, confirming that the monster really was S-rank and the one who defeated it was a student named Minato Kanagi, a boy who'd failed the hunter exam 3 times straight, which honestly made no sense at all. Intrigued, Midori asked the director for a small favor, already planning his next move. At school the next morning, gossip spread like wildfire about the monster incident. One guy bragged about how the creature's aura had paralyzed him completely, while another joked about being the one who defeated it, though no one bought it. The rumor that some random student from their school actually took down an S-rank monster sounded impossible, but it kept everyone talking anyway. Meanwhile, Minato sat leaning against a branch, trembling as his body still ached from channeling the powers of the progenitors the day before. He noticed the stares and whispers, but before he could think, some jerk shoved him aside, telling him to move, muttering that someone as weak-looking as him couldn't possibly have fought a monster like that. The fight yesterday made Minato feel incredible, but the aftermath was brutal. His muscles screamed with pain, and that's when a familiar voice echoed inside his head, laughing and saying he got tired way too easily. Raikiro, the Swordmaster spirit. Skipping all the usual talk, Raikiro told him to get up, mocking the fact that this was the same kid who said he'd surpassed the progenitors, which instantly sparked a flicker of pride in Minato. He remembered his words from the fight, feeling a small push of motivation, and Raikiro urged him to show some perseverance while watching curiously from within, noting that something about the boy had changed. The ancient swordsman thought modern transcendents were pitiful compared to the old era, barely stronger than regular civilians, believing that if the tower were to appear now, humanity would vanish in an instant. Suddenly, Raikiro sensed something enormous, an aura so powerful it swallowed everything around it. And even Minato noticed the shift in his tone, but got no answer when he asked what was wrong. Just then, a man burst out of a nearby room yelling for Minato to come inside immediately, and for a second, the boy thought he was getting expelled. He remembered everyone only had 3 chances to take the hunter exam, the last one being the ordinary test open to any civilian. So when the man told him to head to the field for another test, Minato was stunned. Students who overheard whispered that it probably wasn't even allowed. But rules aside, Minato was going to do it. Even though his body still hurt, he decided to give it everything he had. The first test was a 100-yard dash, where the average time was 3.6 seconds, and the top score was 2.7. But when the signal fired, Minato bolted like lightning, crossing the finish line in 1.2 seconds, silencing everyone. Next was a 1.8-mile run, average time 4 minutes, yet he finished in 1 minute and 17 seconds. Then came push-ups, where he hit 840 reps in 2 minutes, and in the strength test, he bench-pressed 2,820 pounds like it was nothing. Every score shattered the previous records, doubling them entirely, leaving everyone questioning if the guy was even human or just some kind of beast. Minato, still catching his breath, wondered if it was the progenitors helping him again, but Raikiro dismissed that idea, saying none of them had lifted a finger. In the principal's office, data from the test was being tallied. Midori looked through the results and raised an eyebrow at the insane numbers. The principal, still trying to process it, admitted that Minato's athletic ability was off the charts, but mentioned one issue: his mana measurements. Across all 3 tests, the readings came back as immeasurable, which technically meant he had 0 energy, and that's why no one expected much from him. Midori's assistant tried saying the transcendent must have made a mistake, but Midori smirked, telling her to just wait and watch. The final test involved spinning a mana-powered fan as many times as possible within 30 seconds, with the total rotations determining the score. Minato stood there, remembering how useless he'd been for the past 3 years, never once managing to activate mana, but now he finally understood it was all about circulation. He visualized the flow starting from his right foot, coursing through his veins, looping back with each breath, and then releasing through his palm. As the test began, a blue glow surged through him, flowing toward the fan, which immediately started spinning faster and faster until the numbers blurred. The rotation speed became impossible to track, and before anyone could react, the entire thing exploded, flames bursting out as alarms blared. Even from the principal's office, they could see smoke rising, while the fan's blade shot into the ceiling, nearly taking the old man's hair off. Midori watched calmly, saying that Minato must be a special case just like him, the second student in history since himself, whose mana level couldn't be measured. The room went silent as the truth sank in, everyone staring in disbelief, while Minato stood frozen, unable to process what just happened. He had actually passed the hunter test, and not just passed, but obliterated every record that existed. Overwhelmed, he looked down at his own hands, barely believing the power thrumming inside him, realizing that Raikiro had been right all along. The moment he accepted the progenitors into himself, his true potential awakened. He wasn't just some regular student carrying the mark of the void, he was the one they had all been waiting for, the key to fulfilling the dreams of those ancient legends. Out of nowhere, a blinding light bursts through the area, catching Minato completely off guard and nearly burning his retinas with its brightness. He freezes, thinking it might be some kind of explosion, but it turns out to be the same overwhelming energy wave the swordsman had sensed that morning. Then, out of the light, steps Midori, the world's strongest transcendent, smiling like he owns the place. Seeing him in person hits Minato like a truck. This was the literal legend, the man everyone called unbeatable. Midori casually compliments his test performance and congratulates him for passing. But before Minato can process that, the blonde drops the real bomb, a bonus round. The challenge is simple: land a hit on the strongest transcendent alive. That's it. Easy to say, impossible to do. Midori was only 23, but had already been a hunter since age 9, wiping out 1,000 monsters in one strike, and destroying weak hunters just by letting his aura loose. He'd single-handedly saved humanity more than once, ending the pandemonium 10 years ago and the Kyushu crisis 5 years back. As if things weren't terrifying enough, Raichiro's voice echoes in Minato's head, asking to lend his body. Midori, still smiling, lays out the rules: 1 minute to hit him, no punishment if he fails, but every 10 seconds, Midori will strike back. To make things fair, he says he won't use any skills, while Minato can use whatever he wants. He even brought weapons for him to pick from. Minato stares, confused and suspicious, wondering how the hell this was all planned so neatly. Still, he chooses a sword, thinking it's probably his best shot. Midori flexes his hand, saying his body is as tough as steel, strong enough to shatter any blade that touches it. Raichiro is buzzing with excitement, thrilled that they're facing someone strong enough to actually make this interesting. Minato gets it now. This man is so powerful, even a progenitor like Raichiro is eager to fight him. Deep down, he knows it's hopeless, but he can't just back off. The crowd of students is already hanging from the windows, hyped for the duel. Raichiro yells to take control of the body, but Minato ignores him. The timer flashes on Midori's phone. The match begins. He charges straight in, sword in hand, while Raichiro panics internally, thinking the kid's lost his mind. It's reckless. Yeah, but Minato wants to know what a real fight feels like. He swings hard, but Midori doesn't even need to look, dodging everything effortlessly while scrolling through his phone, like this is nothing more than a warm-up. He even asks what social media Minato uses since the videos will be trending soon, completely unfazed by the chaos around him. Still, Minato doesn't stop. He attacks again and again, diagonal slashes, side sweeps, quick jabs, his movements sharper, faster, more determined. One student even whispers in disbelief that most people would have collapsed by now, yet Minato keeps going like a machine, and weirdly, he realizes his body feels different, stronger, lighter, almost untiring, probably thanks to Raichiro's energy running through him. But 10 seconds pass, and Midori finally makes his move. A single wave of energy bursts from him, so strong it tears through the arena. Minato barely dodges, eyes wide, stunned at how insane that power is even when held back. If that had connected, he'd be gone. Midori frowns for the first time, sensing something strange, his control slipping, his opponent still unreadable. That realization pushes Minato harder. He knows if he doesn't level up right now, he'll just get erased. Something clicks inside him, a mix of desperation and resolve, and suddenly his strikes grow sharper. The spectators gasp as the fight accelerates beyond what the cameras can even track. Midori notices the change, the boy's movements smoother, sharper, his swordplay cleaner. But still, it's not enough. He checks his phone again, 41 seconds left. He decides to end it gently, pushing his palm against Minato's chest and launching him backward with terrifying force. The boy crashes through a wall, coughing up blood but somehow smiling through it, realizing he's actually standing against the strongest being alive. Midori sighs, saying he's seen enough, and with 30 seconds still on the timer, ends it with one clean blow to the back of Minato's neck. The fight's over. He admits the kid's got talent, but nowhere near the level he'd hoped for. Calling over his assistant Rin, he declares the match done and says Minato wasn't worth getting excited about. Hearing that, Minato grits his teeth, his body trembling with anger. He hates that condescending tone. And then, that same radiant energy bursts from him again. His consciousness fades as Raichiro finally takes control. The long-haired swordsman cracks his neck and smirks, ready for a real fight. Midori instantly senses the shift, the energy, the stance, the killing intent completely different from before. Raichiro taunts him, saying it's time for something fun, and the next moment, the entire atmosphere shifts. The air trembles with power as they clash. Midori quickly realizes this version of Minato isn't the same. His speed, power, and precision are off the charts. A blade nearly grazes his eye, and for once, he has to take the fight seriously. The ground shakes with each strike, the air filled with sparks of mana as Raichiro goes all in. The crowd can barely follow what's happening. All they see are flashes, bursts, and two silhouettes colliding midair. Raichiro moves like liquid lightning, his sword dancing with wild rhythm, while Midori meets every strike with perfect form. Weapons around them start levitating as their energy collides, the entire arena caught in the storm. Midori, thrilled, goes all out. For the first time, the strongest transcendent is actually smiling. This is the kind of fight he's been craving. Time ticks down, 10 seconds left. Raichiro leaps out of the ring, grabs a sword from one of the bullies who used to mock Minato, and re-enters with fire in his eyes. Midori meets him head-on, the impact blowing apart the school walls. Their fight now tears through the air, the ceiling shaking as both warriors ascend. Midori grabs a massive broken fan blade mid-air, twisting it into a weapon, lightning splitting it into glowing shards. Reichiro laughs like a maniac as the battle explodes in light and sound. Finally, the timer's nearly up. Midori prepares his last move, power radiating like a storm, but Minato, snapping back into control of his body, catches the swordsman's arm mid-attack. Their hands collide with a shockwave, energy surging through the air, leaving both stunned. Minato's hand is torn and bleeding, yet he raises his sword again, determined to finish what he started. Then it happens, his blade grazes Midori, the world's strongest transcendent. For a split second, silence takes over. Two supreme beings standing in mutual respect, their clash echoing like a war between legends. Midori stares at him, then bursts into laughter. He touches his face, where Minato's blade made contact, and smiles. The kid actually did it. He passed. The crowd goes wild, cheering, unable to believe what they just witnessed. Rin rushes in as Midori calmly says the test's over and asks her to heal the boy's arm. And as the dust settles, everyone realizes that the so-called loser just made history by landing a hit on the strongest man alive. As Rin worked on healing his arm, she told Minato to stay still, her calm smile easing his nerves for a moment before she congratulated him for passing, which instantly made him sit up in shock, trying to process what she had just said. While Midori, half amused, teased that maybe he gave a few bonus points, but either way, the boy passed, praising the slick combos he'd pulled mid-fight, though Minato knew deep down that was all Reichiro's doing. Still, the part that truly surprised Midori was how the kid managed to dodge that final blow and even land one back, calling it impressive enough to be proud of. Feeling both honored and confused, Minato thanked him, but he still wanted to know if there was some sort of reward for passing. Even Rin looked curious, waiting for an answer that Midori himself seemed to forget he had to give. So they all just ended up glancing toward the wrecked room as night started to fall and dinner was being made. In the kitchen, his mother asked how many guests would be joining, and nervously he said he wasn't sure, but at least one person would, which made her happy enough to start cooking, while saying this day was perfect because her son passed the exam and even got noticed by someone famous. She proudly mentioned she always believed he could do amazing things if he actually tried, joking that her small house looked like a dog shelter to host someone like Midori, but Minato quickly denied that, saying the guy wouldn't think that way, and once everything was cleaned up, he finally crashed onto his bed, staring at the card in his hand, as memories replayed of when Rin literally smacked Midori for not warning her earlier. Midori had awkwardly tried to defend himself, saying that Minato was supposed to confirm they'd work together if he passed, but since the kid never did, he got hit for it. And still nursing that pain, Midori later suggested they meet at his place at night to talk privately about something serious details about the real enemy, which instantly put Minato on edge, since the progenitors had already destroyed the tower years ago, and the hunters were now only cleaning up escaped monsters from rifts, so if there was more to it, things were way deeper than he thought. Before he could think too much, a voice called his name over and over until it startled him. Reichiro was the one yelling, saying they'd finished their discussion, which made Minato panic and ask if they were deciding who'd control his body next, and turns out that's exactly what they were doing. Nervous as hell, he got up when he sensed someone downstairs and said Midori must have arrived, but as he reached the lower floor, the entire place was pitch dark and silent, until something shiny caught his eye, and he saw his mom collapsed on the floor, making his heart drop as he rushed to her side, feeling another presence nearby. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a figure messing with the food, tasting it, and then spitting it out while mocking how bad it was, saying he'd teach Minato's mom a lesson about serving proper meat. And when Minato demanded to know what he'd done to her, the intruder told him to watch his tone before introducing himself as Goro Haitani, an S-rank hunter working with Midori, saying he was there to take him to headquarters. But Minato didn't care, rage instantly taking over as he tried to attack, only for Goro to knock him down with a cruel grin, mocking his attempt like it was child's play. The boy's mind burned with memories of his mom, remembering how she promised to take care of him after his dad's death, how she always put herself last, even refusing new shoes so he could have better ones, and how earlier that day she'd wished him luck and promised his favorite tonkatsu for dinner, and now this bastard had dared to hurt her. Meanwhile, Reichiro and the others inside him were fired up, seeing this as a chance to decide how to deal with him once and for all, while Goro laughed again, calling the kid adorable before raising his hand to strike, but Minato didn't move an inch, and in a flash he countered, throwing the man straight out of the house. The old man inside watched in awe, while Goro, shocked, tried to make sense of what just happened, wondering if that was some kind of Aikido move since he'd only seen the boys fight with Midori and assumed he just had a strong aura and solid sword skills, now realizing he was far stronger than even an A-rank hunter like Kaisei. But Minato wasn't done, demanding to know what he did to his mother, and Goro admitted coldly that he poisoned her for getting in the way, saying she might just have mild effects if lucky, though the boy could barely even understand those words, too furious to think straight. When Minato asked why he'd hurt someone who wasn't even part of this fight, Goro burst into laughter, calling him an idiot, and saying he was no one's comrade, just a puppet who'd do whatever was ordered, and that weaklings only learn when you take someone precious from them. The boy dodged his next attacks, but then Goro stomped on his foot and hit him again, pulling back to put some distance, as Minato felt his face burning and a purple mark spreading across his skin, realizing the guy's poison was inside him. And Goro smugly explained how he could make countless poisons that could wipe out entire districts, bragging that the toxin would kill Minato in 1 minute unless he agreed to join the guild. But Minato wasn't panicking, he was thinking, realizing how monsters like him were basically walking disasters, and then he calmly asked if the god of medicine, Valentine, was inside him, even apologizing to her for the trouble and asking if she could lend him the antidote soon. Goro, confused as hell, asked who he was talking to, thinking he was hallucinating from fear, until Minato mentioned that Aikido move was courtesy of Hyoma Kodo, the hand of God, confirming what the old man already suspected, that the kid could copy techniques after seeing them once. Then came more Reichiro Hinoki's Bane of Hordes, Shimer Calcese's Blue Death Spear, and even Margit's Divine Archery, all moves he had memorized from stories of the progenitors he'd admired his whole life, and now he revealed they were all inside him, shocking Goro beyond belief. Before the boy said there was no reason to fear him. That statement ticked Goro off, saying if fear didn't work, pain would, promising his next poison would make him beg for mercy as his toxins rotted a nearby tree just by touching the air. But Minato stood unshaken, his aura flaring bright as he unleashed the legendary Fist of Takwang straight into Goro's chest, making the man cough blood, while Reiichiro watched, thrilled. Not stopping there, Minato used the Shining Foot technique of Eilerson, kicking him so hard it ripped the asphalt, then followed up with Karil's Beak Strike and Rowan's Dragon Claw, completely overwhelming the S-rank hunter as the progenitors inside him watched in awe. Finally, he used the flipper technique of Lilac, sending Goro spinning through the air like a damn tornado, while the man struggled to comprehend how the kid broke free from his neural poison. And as if that wasn't enough, Minato's finger glowed gold with lightning as he unleashed Meltius Silentius, the Mage of Truth's legendary spell, striking Goro with divine force that left the entire area shaking. The progenitors were stunned. Reiichiro even pointed out that the last time they'd seen something like that was when they took down Technomotora, and that was after lending their powers once, yet this kid not only copied them perfectly, but replicated the physics and magic too, possibly because of the Mark of the Void. That thought alone made the swordsman grin with excitement, saying they had to go all in for this kid, because if they trained him together, Minato could easily become the greatest transcendent the world had ever seen. The boys sprinted through the narrow gaps between buildings, desperate not to miss their chance since 15 other guilds were already on their way to recruit the kid who took down Midori Ikihara, and showing up late wasn't an option. The blonde suddenly appeared out of nowhere, casually mentioning how many were chasing after Minato, and the strongest transcendent smirked, asking if it was really 15 before declaring that made them the last ones to arrive. The next moment, a sudden blast from Midori sent his opponent crashing into the ground, cutting off any further talk. Over the phone, he spoke with Rin, who reported she'd reached the area and thankfully didn't sense any other transcendents nearby, though something else caught her attention. Someone had already beaten them to it because Goro Haitani, an S-rank hunter known for his poison abilities, was lying near Minato's house, looking like death itself. Hearing that made Midori laugh, finding it insane that the boy actually managed to defeat an S-rank hunter. When the blonde asked if Minato was injured or poisoned, the boy assured him he was fine and said his mother was resting safely on the couch too. Reiichiro mentioned that, if it weren't for Valentine, both mother and son would have been gone already. Impressed it only took her 5 seconds to remove the poison. The woman admitted she even extracted a bit of Goro's serum during the process, and Midori apologized for arriving late, explaining that many guilds were chasing after Minato after the video of the fight spread. When Minato asked if Goro's claim of being his partner was true, the blonde said some people use fake partnerships as manipulation tactics. Midori then asked Rin if she was done with repairs, and she confirmed the walls and fences were restored, after which he told everyone to come inside so they could talk about Minato's future. The next day began with his mother asking if he had packed everything while still worrying about his safety, even though he confirmed he was ready. The night before, Midori had said he wanted to recruit Minato, smiling as he mentioned the boy's incredible potential and how, under his guidance, he'd become a top-tier hunter. That compliment had Minato beaming with pride, thrilled that the legendary Midori Ikihara himself saw him as a talent, though his mother couldn't hold back her tears. For the farewell, she packed him breakfast in a disposable container, so he wouldn't need to bring anything back, her expression somber as she asked if her son would face many dangers, to which Midori truthfully said yes. She admitted that Minato's admiration for the legendary progenitors had always driven his dream of becoming a hunter, feeling both proud and terrified as a mother, and Midori promised he'd train him to become a powerful warrior worthy of those heroes. Her eyes welled up with gratitude as she thanked him for guiding her son. During the car ride, Rin asked if Midori was sure he could keep that promise, since no one could truly predict the future, and through the rearview mirror, Midori quietly watched Minato's mother, giving her son simple advice about everyday things, like not sleeping on a full stomach and sorting his laundry by color. Midori said he'd keep his word as best as he could before telling Minato it was time to go. Looking back with a soft grin, the boy told his mother to take care of herself as she called out for him to return home for New Year's, leaving him teary-eyed as he nodded and departed into his new life. Midori then asked if he was truly ready to leave, and Minato confirmed, saying if he looked back again, he might lose the courage to go. Since the trip was long, Midori suggested he relax, maybe eat or nap a little. Minato looked at the lunchbox his mother had packed, opening it to see his favorite meal with a note wishing him good luck, which brought a wave of emotion as he silently thanked her while tears slipped down his face. Rin remained serious as always, while Midori leaned back casually in the passenger seat, and the three of them enjoyed the sunny drive through the mountains until Minato, staring out the window, asked about the place. Midori smiled and told him this was a special state agency, where only a few transcendents worked, known as the Counter-Prophecy Unit or CPU, welcoming him to its headquarters. Curious about the name, Minato glanced around as someone from inside noticed their arrival, announcing that the new recruit had finally shown up. The woman sipping tea asked if they had a new teammate, while another member smirked, saying it was always exciting to get fresh blood, though the redhead muttered that only time would tell if the newcomer was truly worthy of joining the CPU. Still curious, Minato asked about the place, apologizing for all the questions since he'd assumed he was joining Midori's guild. Rin apologized for not explaining earlier, saying it was classified information even his mother couldn't know. Midori told him to store his belongings in the dormitory, and Rin offered to carry them, though Minato politely declined. Suddenly, a boy appeared mid-air, striking at him out of nowhere, surprised when Minato instantly blocked it. Thinking his opponent was skilled, Minato braced himself as the stranger landed gracefully, introducing himself as Hikotaro Hanada, a member of the CPU. Watching with amusement, Midori told the woman to bring tea as he enjoyed the unexpected spar. Minato asked why they were fighting if they were in the same guild, and Hikotaro said this was how he'd test his strength and teach him about the place. Minato stayed on defense, blocking kicks that still packed heavy force, and in between hits, Midori asked if he wanted to know how the CPU was formed, smiling at how the boy could hold a conversation mid-battle. Hikotaro asked for his name, and Minato introduced himself, while Midori watched calmly, recalling how this boy had passed the hunter exam, survived an S-rank test, and now faced another challenge. Rin joked that he seemed cursed to be tested endlessly, and the woman reminded Midori that he was the one who brought him here. Amid the duel, Midori asked what hunters did, and Minato replied that they eliminated monsters escaping from dimensional rifts, which earned an approving grin from the blonde who added they were like exterminators. Then he asked about greater calamities, confusing Minato, so Midori explained there were disasters so catastrophic they made dimensional rifts look mild, like the Pandemonium incident 10 years ago, or the Kyushu outbreak 5 years ago. Shocked, Minato said he'd been taught those were caused by massive rifts, but Midori clarified that wasn't the whole truth, landing another strike that shook the ground and destroyed a nearby tree. These events, he revealed, were actually invasions from another dimension crises on the same scale as the monster tower that appeared 300 years ago. The revelation left Minato stunned, especially when Midori added that the invaders were still watching, waiting for another chance to strike. Since Transcendents today were weaker than the progenitors, only a few matched their power, which was why the CPU existed, a small elite group of warriors capable of predicting and preventing future calamities. Proud of his words, Midori looked at Minato, who repeated that the CPU fought against prophecies, earning a grin from Hikotaro, who praised his endurance for blocking so many kicks and officially welcomed him. Just then, the other Transcendents appeared silently, watching from afar as Hikotaro announced that Minato had passed his test. They vanished again without saying a word, leaving Midori slightly amused, while Hikotaro said they might have to test the progenitor's vessel themselves before offering to show Minato around, casually carrying his suitcase toward the dormitory, as the boy's new journey officially began. Night falls fast, and Minato's chilling in his private room, lost in thought. He's thinking about how every time some doomsday prophecy shows up, it's the CPU's job to fight and make sure it never actually happens. But then the thought hits him, what if one day there's a threat as bad as that massive tower incident, the one that took all the progenitors working together to destroy? And if that happens, will he even be strong enough to face it? Just then, Raikiro shows up out of nowhere, saying the best solution is simple: train harder. That throws Minato completely off balance. Not only is Raikiro there, but a bunch of other legendary heroes too. The swordsman explains that he didn't get to tell Minato before, because things kept getting crazy. But now all the progenitors have made a decision. They're gonna make Minato the strongest transcendent in history, even stronger than Midori. The kid's stunned. He can't believe they actually want him as their disciple. After all, he thought they just wanted to use his body. Raikiro jokes that he wouldn't have minded that, but then they'd all be fighting over it, and Minato quickly asks them not to fight for his sake. Raikiro admits that yeah, that was their original plan, but watching him in action made them change their minds. Instead of using him, they decided it'd be way more fun to train him. He brings up that poison user Minato beat, how he managed to copy the guy's techniques perfectly after seeing them just once. Sure, his version wasn't as clean as the original, but he still won. Raikiro says that's wild, and he's convinced Minato's real power is his ability to absorb and replicate others' skills, something that might even surpass the progenitors themselves. That's when it hits Minato. The moment Raikiro says those words, tears start streaming down his face. He remembers all the times people called him hopeless, laughed at him for failing the hunter exam 3 times, and told him to just quit. Reporters didn't even care who he was. Even Kaisei, the one who tried to kill him, didn't know his name. No one ever believed he had a future. And now here he was, with the very people he idolized, being told he had the potential to become the greatest transcendent alive. Crying, he wonders if he's even allowed to be happy for once in his life. Raikiro looks at him, a bit puzzled but smiling anyway, and asks why he's crying. He tells Minato that they literally live through him. Especially when he's asleep, that's when they're free beyond time and space. Raikiro then tells him he's got big plans for him. From now on, he'll be training Minato 100 hours a day in real time. During the day, Minato will help the CPU handle prophecies, and at night, he'll train with the progenitors in his dreams. No rest, no breaks. Raikiro assumes he's ready for that. Still crying but full of determination, Minato agrees. He's honored to learn from them. By the time morning rolls around, Hikotaro hears footsteps and turns with a grin. It's Minato. The dark-haired boy greets him good morning, looking totally exhausted. Hikotaro laughs, saying his first day was the same, but then notices something strange, an aura glowing faintly around Minato. Before he can process it, he throws one of his kicks, but Minato easily dodges and just spits, saying he's not even fully awake yet and will see him in the hall. Hikotaru's left, totally confused. His kick was faster than yesterday, but Minato dodged it like it was nothing. Later, everyone gathers for breakfast. Hikotaro grabs a spot and invites Minato to sit, but there's already a girl there. She keeps eating, clearly not thrilled. When Minato politely introduces himself, she cuts him off, saying she doesn't care who he is and won't bother learning his name until he proves he's worth it. Then she points her fork at him like a threat, saying training starts soon and there's a prophecy they'll be dealing with, and Minato's gonna be part of it too. Back in 1945, the first ever prophecy book was found deep in Antarctica, buried under almost 3 kilometers of ice. Some guy dug it out, and the title scribbled, like a kid wrote it, talked about world-ending calamities that would hit over the next 80 years. Creepy, right? Someone asks if people actually believe in these prophecies, but before that goes anywhere, Minato awkwardly apologizes and admits he still doesn't know the girl's name. She brushes it off, saying it doesn't matter, and pushes him to just answer the question. He says people believe because the prophecies actually came true, but she calls BS. With her lilac eyes locked on him, she says if even one prophecy had truly happened, the whole world would have been wiped out. That thought alone makes Minato uneasy. So he quickly asks Hikotaro how many prophecies exist, and the blonde just smiles, saying around 200. That number freaks Minato out even more. Does that mean the world could end any time? Midori steps in, calming him down by explaining that the CPU has already stopped about 180 of them. But the lilac-eyed girl shifts the convo back, talking about the explorer who first discovered that Book of Doom. His name was Barnard Russell, and when he opened it, the first page literally greeted him by name plus details about how he'd find the book. Wild. Then the story jumps to Sumida, Tokyo, where a medium-sized dimensional rift's causing chaos. Police are shouting at people to step back, but no one listens. The girl starts talking about past disasters, the Third World War, the dark side of the moon, biological attacks, a flying giant tree, all of which were stopped by top-tier transcendents. Midori, in fact, handled the whole pandemonium incident recently. Turns out, the Book of Doom isn't the only one out there. There are tons of prophecy books, and that's why the Counter-Prophecy Unit CPU was created to collect, analyze, and prevent every single one from coming true. The CPU works with 4 danger levels, level 1 for local threats, up to emergency-level stuff that could wipe out humanity. Minato asks if they're heading to the rift to stop another prophecy, and the girl confirms it's a normal day for CPU members. But nearby, a guy in a suit warns his teammate Kurosagi, an S-rank hunter, that a few unknowns are approaching. Thinking they're just civilians, he tells them to stay back, it's too dangerous. The girl quickly explains they're dealing with a level 3 prophecy, one mentioned in the Golden Poetry Anthology, a third-class prophecy book. Before anyone can react, the rift starts cracking open. Everyone's on edge. Then boom, A-rank monsters pour out, humanoid wolves tearing through everything. Kurosagi gets ready to fight, throwing up barriers, but the wolves are already wrecking the place. He realizes this is way too much for the B and C ranks to handle, and the energy coming from the rift feels wrong. Worse, the boss monster's about to step out. He looks at the new arrivals and notices they're weirdly calm. Kurosagi shouts again that civilians shouldn't be here, but the lilac-eyed girl ignores him. She summons Trismegistus, and liquid metal wraps around her hand before turning into sharp, sleek blades. The wolves charge, but she wipes them out instantly, each one skewered like it's nothing, not a single one left standing. Then Hikotaro joins in, flying through with his kicks, clearing out anything still moving. Kurosagi just stares, stunned. These randoms are stronger than him and he's an S rank. The purple-eyed girl smirks, saying that right now, he's the civilian, not them. Before he can respond, the ground shakes again. Gigantic claws tear through the rift, followed by glowing eyes far more menacing than before. Even the trio feels the pressure. Out steps Gillirenal, a massive, wild beast, easily S rank or higher. Kurosagi panics, shouting for them to be careful as they all rush in from different sides. Hikotaro kicks with everything he's got, but nothing's working. The monster's armor is built to tank physical attacks. Gillirenal charges at the girl, but she blocks it using her liquid shield. Then, boom, Minato appears right in front of her, radiating that insane aura again. He raises one hand and stops the monster's strike, dead. The beast pushes harder, but every ounce of pressure it adds only cracks its own armor. A blinding explosion follows. When the smoke clears, everyone's speechless. Hikotaro lets out a whistle, saying that's how you do it. He's still trying to wrap his head around how Minato one-shotted an S-rank monster, like it was casual work. The kid's gotten way stronger overnight, and it shows. But the lilac-eyed girl, still sharp as ever, snaps at him, saying he could have at least warned them first. Minato just smirks, knowing the trick. When you're up against a tank like that, you've got to gather energy and blast it from the inside. It's something he learned last night from Ta Kwang, the legendary fist. A basic punching technique, sure, but damn, it came in clutch. Once the fight's over, Minato finally asks the girl for her name, saying it's easier to call for backup when things get messy. She introduces herself as Akane Shinomiya. No time to rest though, Hikotaro's already back to kicking wolves, while Akane uses Mercurius Reject, melting the rest of them. Watching the carnage, Hikotaro laughs, admitting Minato was right, and even Akane agrees that internal attacks work better. Then she calls out to Minato, it's time to finish this. Kurosagi's jaw drops. These maniacs are actually about to go inside the rift, into another dimension. He mutters that it's pure suicide, but Minato's already in, following them without hesitation. The three vanish into the rift, leaving Kurosagi standing there dumbfounded. He's never seen anyone like them, and can only assume they're part of that secret organization people whisper about. More giant wolves come charging in again, and Akane immediately realizes they're the same kind that crawled out of the rift earlier. She's done dealing with these mutts. With one swift motion, she fires her mercury everywhere, the liquid twisting midair into dozens of sharp spears that pierce through everything in sight. Minato watches in awe, completely impressed by her control, while Hikotaro explains that she's an absolute beast when it comes to large-scale destruction. But before they can relax, an even bigger armored wolf stomps in. Akane calls out to Hikotaro, and he rushes forward without hesitation. The creature swings its claws, but the blonde boy leaps up, dodging easily and taunting it from the ceiling. He's lightning fast, striking again and again before it can react. Minato can't help but admire his agility, and now, it's his turn to join the fun. Mimicking Hikotaro's movements, he lands perfect hits, earning a grin from his blonde buddy, who's hyped to see Minato pulling off his techniques. The three move fast, no time to waste. But the deeper they go, the more unsettling things feel. Akane's vision can't pierce the fog ahead, and Minato starts wondering why this room feels so massive and empty. Then boom, heavy footsteps echo through the space, shaking the ground. Minato's instincts kick in. Whatever's coming is huge. Hikotaro guesses it's the boss. The monster steps into view, a towering, blind minotaur, its aura screaming S-rank or worse. Akane stays calm, saying it finally showed itself. She asks if that's really the boss, but doesn't wait for an answer, already summoning Trismegistus. A glowing circle spreads across the floor around the Minotaur, as countless light-forged blades rise from it. It's her signature move, El Dorado, her golden rule. When facing a strong opponent, go all out from the start. She holds the beast off, shouting for the boys to finish it. Hikotaro sighs, saying he wishes he had flashy moves like hers, but grins anyway. Time to get serious. Minato watches their teamwork in awe, but something feels off. He quietly says her attack type won't work here. The blonde freezes, uneasy at Minato's tone, while Akane snaps back, asking if he's really criticizing her top-tier spell. And right then the Minotaur roars, unleashing a massive energy blast that tears through half the room like paper, not a scratch on it despite their attacks. That's when they realize they're in serious trouble. Suddenly, one of the progenitors inside Minato's mind speaks up, admiring Akane's incredible talent, her casting, her precision, her style. He admits she's easily worthy of top marks, but also points out her one mistake, ignoring the boss's immunity to physical damage. Minato asks how they're supposed to beat it, and instead of answering, the progenitor Killick decides to show him. While Hikotaru's busy figuring out the same thing, Akane groans that she should have brought a mage, but she has no idea Minato's vessel comes with his own surprises. Killick asks to borrow his body for a bit. Instantly, Mercurius bursts to life with way more power, the liquid wrapping around the Minotaur and locking it in place. Akane's eyes widen. How the hell is Minato using her ability? She demands an explanation, but the voice that answers isn't Minato's. Killick, speaking through him, bluntly calls her a fool. He says brute force won't work. It's what happens when someone focuses too much on one skill. She's strong, but still has things to learn. Then he explains that a true alchemist masters all three states of matter and knows how to use them together. Controlling the mercury, he starts heating it, making the liquid boil like molten metal. The monster thrashes, smoke rising as its armor begins to melt from the inside. Akane can't believe what she's seeing, controlling temperature that precisely should be impossible. The Minotaur collapses with a thunderous crash, completely defeated. Killick explains it was the creature tied to the Grade 3 prophecy in the Golden Poetry Anthology. Mission accomplished. Minato's consciousness returns, and the progenitor praises him for finishing the job. Everyone's relieved, but Akane's still processing what just happened. Transcendents aren't supposed to use abilities outside their marks, so how did he do that? She always assumed Minato was like Hikotaru, bound to one type of power. Still stunned, she watches him step forward, extend his hand, and reintroduce himself with a smile, asking her to remember his name, Minato Kanagi. It feels like he's mocking her, and she's clearly irritated, but she accepts it anyway. Hikotaro laughs, thrilled that his new partner's finally been acknowledged by Akane. Looks like the rookie's officially part of the CPU now. Outside the rift, Kurosagi and his squad were waiting, watching the unstable portal flicker and shrink. Someone pointed out that it was closing, and tension filled the air. Then, out of nowhere, Minato stumbled out of the rift, alive. Hikotaro followed right after, helping Akane make it through before the gateway sealed behind them. Everyone around stared in disbelief. These kids had just walked out of a death trap. As the rift finally vanished, Kurosagi called out to Minato, thanking him for saving his team. Curious but respectful, he asked who they really were and what happened inside, though he figured it was classified. Akane stepped forward and told him to just draw the symbols in his report. No questions would be asked if he did that. He agreed, promising to reach out if another rift appeared, but Akane told him not to worry. Incidents like this were extremely rare, and they wouldn't be showing up again. Her tone made it clear they operated on a level beyond his world. Kurosagi laughed, realizing that he and his men were the civilians here. Days later, on May 11, a strange red lightning bolt shot through a cave village in Prefecture. Something was clearly brewing there. Back at CPU headquarters, Akane mentioned that they should get started on their mission report, but Hikotaro interrupted. They'd just been summoned to the research lab. When they reached conference room 3, the place looked empty, but something about the silence felt off. A red-haired guy was sitting there, calling out to Akane as soon as he saw them. He teased them for taking so long, saying it was just a level 3 mission. Minato immediately recognized him as one of the people who'd been observing him earlier. Hikotaro told him to relax. He wasn't the leader here. The redhead ignored him and asked the director why they'd been called in. The director pulled up a photo from the interpretation team. Akane tilted her head and asked if the weird object was a chunk of coal. He explained it wasn't. It was a prophecy book discovered near a volcano, and decoding it had been a nightmare. Thanks to new AI tech, they managed to decipher part of the text, and it contained information that directly concerned Japan. Akane looked shocked. Was this a new prophecy? Minato asked if that wasn't a normal thing, but Hikotaro said he'd never heard of a completely new prophecy before. The CPU had always dealt with old prophecies gathered from all over the world, but a brand new one was unheard of. The redhead guessed they were being assigned to investigate it, and the director confirmed. The main strike team was busy, so these 4 would handle the initial investigation. Minato was surprised they were already being sent out again, but to the others, it was just another day on the job. The redhead immediately took command, calling the others his subordinates, which earned him a glare from Akane. The director told them to proceed cautiously since the prophecy's rank was unknown, and to call for backup if things got out of hand. Minato couldn't help feeling nervous. This was something completely new, something beyond their usual missions. The redhead told them to rest before departure, but Akane snapped that he wasn't her boss and she didn't need sleep. Minato quietly disagreed, saying he'd close his eyes for a few minutes, and even Hikotaro sided with him. It didn't take long for Akane to lose that little battle. She dozed off, insisting she wasn't sleeping. A sudden shout of her name jolted her awake. Akane sat up, frowning at Minato for not waking her. But he told her to just look around. What she saw wiped the sleep from her eyes. Massive scarlet columns surrounded them, pulsing with energy. Hikotaro immediately sensed how serious it was, saying the prophecy was about to activate. Akane studied the glowing structures and realized this was the largest magic circle she'd ever seen. The columns seemed to hold the remains of the 23 villagers mentioned in the report. The redhead compared it to the vanished apartment case in Wakayama Prefecture, where a hole to another dimension had almost opened. Then, the columns started glowing even brighter. Akane's voice turned sharp. There was no time left. Hikotaro asked what the plan was, but the redhead already had his weapon drawn, saying they'd stop the prophecy by force. Akane reminded him of the director's orders, just as a wave of power surged behind them. It came from Minato. His aura flared, wild and bright, and with a confident grin, he asked if they were ready. Akane was stunned. He was stronger than he'd been just this morning. Hikotaro confirmed it with disbelief, and Shinji, the redhead, grinned, saying there was no reason to wait. Leaping forward, he told them to follow his lead. Akane muttered that he wasn't the leader, but still dashed after him. The glowing columns intensified, and deep within Minato, the mage stirred, murmuring that it had been a long time since she'd smelled that kind of energy. Raikiro's voice followed, agreeing it was a scent they both knew all too well when they were alive. From an old tombstone, a faint red light began to pulse, and then a decayed hand clawed its way out from the dirt. The air grew heavy with the stench of dark magic, the same scent the progenitors instantly recognized. It was a forbidden spell, one straight out of the prophecy that spoke of the crimson moon's glow dimming as the beast awakened, destined to be sent back to the underworld. That beast was none other than the transcendent and master sorcerer, Shijima Bando. Long ago, during the high-end period, Shijima had slaughtered countless lives in a bloody massacre before being struck down by a divination priest, his own companion. His dying words echoed in the prophecy. He didn't have much time left, but his resurrection would come in 1,000 years, when he'd return as the Demon King, devourer of all life. Before his fall, he cast a forbidden spell, sacrificing every living creature in the area to fuel his rebirth. And now, the prophecy written in the Book of Hell had begun. Their new mission: stop Shijima Bando, whose grade was still unknown. As the sorcerer rose, he muttered that his resurrection felt weak. He needed more sacrifices to regain full power. The world around him was darker than before, yet he could already sense fresh prey nearby. Activating the Circle of Doom, he unleashed a devastating blast wave that shook the entire field. Minato yelled for his team, but Hikotaro told him to stay calm and watch out below. That's when they noticed it. Dozens of hands emerging from glowing magic circles, dragging them down with the snare of the dead ability. The sorcerer's speed was unreal. He was casting spells back to back without a pause. It was clear this wasn't just another fight, this was a monster from another era. Out of the corner of his eye, Shijima noticed movement. Minato launched an attack, mimicking Hikotaro's moves, but Shijima easily dodged and mocked him, saying he had potential but lacked refinement. Then, with a wave of his hand, he trapped Minato in another circle. The room flared with light, but then something unexpected happened. Minato broke free with ease using Hadad, one of the first abilities he'd ever mastered. The sorcerer's smirk faltered. Even so, he countered fast, suspending Minato in midair, only to be caught off guard by Shinji. The redhead moved silently, his dagger glowing before he blasted the sorcerer with a marigold strike. It hit hard, but Shijima just laughed, calling it a waste. Shinji didn't let up. He unleashed his Autumn Thistle ability, turning his sword beams into a rain of blazing streaks. The sorcerer raised an eyebrow, impressed that Shinji could hold his own. He admitted the redhead was strong, stronger than he expected. Watching from the sidelines, Minato could only wonder how powerful this ancient being really was. Stronger than the progenitors, stronger than Midori. This was on another level. Akane's voice snapped him back. She and the others were breaking free from their binds. The fight wasn't over yet, but Shijima wasn't slowing down either. He spread multiple magic circles around him, summoning grotesque bone spirits, each one radiating deadly energy. There were 3 of them, stronger than even the Minotaur boss from before. Minato's mark of the void began to glow. His expression hardened. Shijima sneered, saying the boy was alone now, but before he could finish, Shinji landed a clean strike on him. The redhead didn't even glance back. He said that in this world, the only thing worth trusting is your own strength. The sorcerer laughed in agreement, declaring he didn't need anyone either, he'd devour them all. The battlefield exploded with energy as they clashed head-on. Shinji pushed himself to the limit, barely holding his defense. That's when Minato reappeared beside him, his aura flaring brighter than before. Shijima looked confused, wondering how the boy had destroyed his bone spirits so fast. Half of one was missing entirely. Then, before anyone could react, Minato's punch landed square on the sorcerer, sending him stumbling. Even Shinji was stunned. The kid had just done what none of them could. Minato reminded him they'd only win if they fought together. The full moon illuminated the chaos as Shinji hesitated, realizing even Hikotaro and Akane were still struggling with their own monsters. But his pride got in the way. He refused to fight alongside anyone. He was determined to take the bastard down alone. The sorcerer found that amusing, saying he'd gladly entertain a one-on-one. Shijima unleashed his apocalyptic flash attack, the explosion throwing Minato violently across the field. The villain laughed as dust and rubble filled the air, thinking the boy was finished. But in that chaos, Shinji charged again, slashing through the aftermath. The entire area lay in ruins. Minato was down, bloodied and motionless. Then, inside his void, he found himself standing in the dark again. Confused, he asked why. Raikiro's voice answered, saying he had blacked out, and they used the moment to pull him in. Minato tried to speak, but the pain shot through his chest. Still, he wanted out, he wanted to get back to the fight. But the progenitors told him to stop. And that caught him completely off guard. Outside, chaos raged as Shijima laughed through the destruction, admitting he and the redhead shared the same mindset. That alone worried Shinji, who knew he wasn't strong enough to take him down. The sorcerer told him it was smart not to drag anyone else into this mess. That's why he'd devour them alone. His power flared higher, turning the fight brutal. Shinji pushed himself harder, enhancing his blade for another desperate strike, but Shijima only grinned, saying he hadn't had this much fun in centuries. Meanwhile, Raikiro explained that the redhead might be above Hikotaro and Akane, but still, nothing close to the sorcerer, meaning the kid had no real chance. The mage revealed that the enemy was casting an advanced version of a forbidden resurrection spell. If it were in a populated city, he'd have enough souls to become a demon king. Devouring Minato's soul would make him even stronger, which is why she told the boy to only focus on minimizing the damage. None of them expected this strange prophecy, and it was pure chance Minato got assigned to it. Raikiro asked him to lend his body so they could fight in his place, but Minato refused. He said this wasn't training, it was real combat. In the future, there'd be no guarantees that battles would ever match his strengths. With that confident grin, he looked to his masters for their approval. The mage still wanted him to stay out of it, but Raikiro's laughter broke her hesitation because the boy was right. His goal was to surpass every progenitor, so the swordsman gave his blessing, telling his student to give it his all. Raikiro told him to use everything he's learned and stop the sorcerer at any cost. Minato promised he would. Turning back toward the battlefield, he vowed not to let them down and sprinted off, determination blazing. Back in the fight, Shijima mocked Shinji for running out of tricks, landing a brutal hit that forced the redhead to leap back. The sorcerer declared it was time for the end, but Shinji, battered and breathless, refused to give up. Just when it seemed over, someone grabbed his sword. It was Minato, asking to borrow it for a minute. Shinji could barely process it. This kid kept pulling surprises out of nowhere. Minato gained momentum as he landed. Shijima was already charging another apocalyptic blast, but the boy unleashed his Hinoki-style sword technique Sea Storm Slash, clashing head-on with the sorcerer's ray. The collision lit up the battlefield. Even Shijima was stunned by the power, wondering what kind of monster this kid was. Minato calmly introduced himself. Minato Kanagi, the one who'd surpass all progenitors. Watching from afar, Raikiro asked the mage who she thought would win. She said it was impossible to tell. All they could do now was wait. Raikiro smirked, saying his student wasn't dumb, he definitely had a plan. Minato kept charging forward, his strikes sharper and faster than ever. Even the sorcerer couldn't believe what he was seeing. Shinji stood aside, watching the same brat who once said they should team up. He had brushed him off back then, but now, he couldn't help but feel a little regret. Minato fought fiercely, until crimson orbs started appearing, the sorcerer's forbidden pomegranate ability. The boy dodged each blast, but the energy kept homing in. Realizing it would follow him until it hit, he stopped running and came up with a plan. Takwang, watching proudly, knew his student was about to pull something insane. Minato stomped the ground, raising a massive stone shield that blocked the blasts. The sorcerer laughed, calling him a fool for hiding behind rocks, but the boy stayed focused, creating more barriers until the smoke swallowed the field. When it cleared, Shijima was shocked. The kid was still standing. Using Illerson's foot technique and light reflection, Minato appeared behind him and slashed, drawing blood. The sorcerer stumbled back, unable to believe it. He tried his circle of doom, twisting chaos around them, but Minato slipped out unscathed. He couldn't afford mistakes, every move mattered. Striking again, he cut through another attack, his precision growing sharper with every motion. Even Shijima admitted the brat's moves were impressive, but he doubted the boy was strong enough to be a real threat. Still, he couldn't help wondering just how many abilities Minato had. The progenitors watched closely, surprised at how fast he was improving. The mage stayed tense, tracking every second of her student's duel with the former ally. When the sorcerer began casting another forbidden spell, all three masters went on alert. Akane, still fighting her own monster elsewhere, sensed something massive forming. Then, in the middle of the battlefield, a three-headed skull rose, its flesh decaying, glowing with death. The sorcerer thanked Minato for the fun, but said it was over. His masters shouted for him to retreat, but the boy didn't move. He just heard those familiar words echo again, "You're not strong enough." He knew it was true, even after giving everything he had. But that didn't mean he'd stop. The mage decided to help, teaching him a basic spell on the spot, Gera Flame. Minato's hand ignited. The Hinoki style was about both grace and power, and Sea Storm Slash was designed to cut through any enemy. This time, he'd strike without hesitation. Holding the blade in one hand and fire in the other, Minato looked like a whole new person. Even his masters couldn't believe their eyes. Shijima had to prepare for real now. The boy was radiating a terrifying aura. This new move, Minato's own creation, would one day be known as Shimmering Slash. With one blazing swing, he cut straight through the sorcerer's bone shield, slicing the monster in half. Even the progenitors were stunned. The alchemist jumped in excitement, realizing Minato's greatest strength wasn't just mastering techniques, it was how he could mix and switch between them mid-battle. Raikiro found his enthusiasm odd, but the mage reminded him he's an alchemist. He was right. They'd misunderstood Minato all along. When asked if it was a good idea to keep teaching him, the swordsman simply smiled. Of course it was. They needed to see just how far this kid could go. Meanwhile, the boy looked completely drained, barely able to stand. The sorcerer had been sliced clean in half, but the victory didn't last. His dark, viscous fluid began bubbling violently as the missing half of his body started regenerating. It only took seconds for Shijima Bando to reform completely. He admitted that if his head had been severed, he'd be dead for sure, especially since he'd been caught off guard, but he wasn't going to let that happen again. Just then, something unexpected hit him, a barrage of wild camellia strikes from Shinji. Shijima had forgotten all about the redhead while being too caught up in his fight with Minato, and now he was paying for it. Shinji jumped back into the fray, pulling his unconscious companion out of harm's way. The sorcerer stood motionless, watching as Shinji shielded Minato, his expression darkening as a long-buried memory hit him like a wave. He remembered a freezing night, Haru's weak cough echoing in his arms. He'd asked if she was cold, begging her to hold on till sunrise, promising he'd find food once daylight came, but Haru didn't respond. Panic spread through his face as he called her name again and again. In the flickering lamplight of the cart they traveled in, he wrapped himself tighter against the cold, trying to protect what little warmth remained. Around them, travelers laughed and talked, their joy cutting deeper into his loneliness. Shijima had once wondered why they were the ones who had to suffer, thinking solitude might be freedom, but realizing, too late, that being alone was a curse. His figure slowly faded into the snow, disappearing into the memory. When he came back to his senses, Shinji's determination hit him again. The redhead finally understood something: he wasn't alone anymore. Even if he acted like it didn't bother him, it always had. But before he could process the feeling, a sudden shift in the air made his instincts scream something bad was coming. Hikotaro and Akane came rushing in, Akane calling out Minato's name in panic. She checked if he was breathing, and Shinji confirmed he wasn't badly injured. Relief washed over her lilac eyes, but Hikotaro warned them not to relax just yet. The barrier above was collapsing, expanding wide enough to swallow the entire village. If the energy inside detonated, they'd all be crushed in seconds. Shinji suggested they combine their powers to counter it, but with how drained they were, he wasn't sure it'd be enough. Still, none of them were ready to give up. Together, they decided to try one last time, give it everything they had left. That's when Minato stirred. He got back on his feet, gripping his sword, his aura calm yet overwhelming. But it wasn't Minato in control anymore, it was Raikiro, using the boy's body. Minato had earned his rest after proving his worth and keeping his promise not to let his masters down, and the mentors couldn't be prouder. The barrier's cracks deepened as the Transcendent Ones unleashed their final surge of power. Raikiro wielded the Hinoki cloud beam technique, slicing through the collapsing energy with blinding precision. From afar, soldiers ran toward the chaos, shouting to their commander about the strange light swallowing the sky. Someone from the Suo counter-prophecy unit arrived, Captain Makoto. He stared at the explosion of divine light radiating from Minato's body, sword energy bursting like a storm through the ruins. The sheer magnitude of it left him speechless. In awe, he could only mutter one thing: who the hell was this kid capable of doing something like that?